Hey, Fanboy Nation.
This is your pal Daffy Duck, and you're watching.
We're watching Fanboy.
A fanboy, etc.
Fanboy Nation.
I assume Tom.
If you haven't noticed the theme so far, with the Mickey Mouse Club behind us, we get to talk to Anthony Donovan today. Man of many hats, currently wearing one right now, but we know him as a stand-up comedian, as a food blogger, as a podcast host, as a million other things. But he is the social media manager of Always in the Club, a charity associated with the 1989 through 1996 all-new Mickey Mouse Club. Don't to be confused with the original Mickey Mouse Club and then the new Mickey Mouse Club, the all-new Mickey Mouse Club. That's just too many words for one show.
They had to.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're the social media manager. You've befriended so many of them. I've been lucky enough to talk to Jennifer McGill a couple of times. She's very sweet. I've talked to Chasen a couple of times. Like, our schedules have never matched up in order for us to do an interview, but he's always been cool with me. It's always interesting to see, like, you know, we don't have the people opining for the 1977 version where no one realizes that Molly Ringwald and Lisa Whelchel from The Facts of Life were Mouseketeers at one point in time.
Well, and Corey Feldman's older sister.
I even forgot about Corey's older sister.
Yep.
You know, what is it about? Because obviously this was the longest running one. The original one ran 3 years. Yes. The second incarnation ran 2, and this one lasts nearly 7. Like, what is it about this series in particular that, like, everyone's like, this is it. This is the definitive Mickey Mouse Club?
I think it was the incarnation of the show that spoke most to the time that it was of. If you look at the 50s show and the 70s show, aside from one being in color and the other one being in black and white, you couldn't really get a feel for the kids of those eras aside from how they were dressed. Whereas with the show that you and I grew up with, the MMC, the All New Mickey Mouse Club, it was done for kids like us by kids like us. And it was such a time capsule of that kind of 89 through 96. And I think that really connected because they skewed older with our version of it than the previous incarnations. So I think that was a big part of it too.
You know, you work with the charity that's affiliated with the all new Mickey Mouse Club. Has there been any moments of reaching out to previous incarnations of going, you know, yes, we're the more popular one. Sorry, class of 77. But, you know, and go, hey, we love you guys too. There's still like this familial tie.
I mean, they're actually during season 3 of MMC, 5 or 6 of the original 50s Mouseketeers, including Annette, came on and did their 100th anniversary, their 100th episode special. And a lot of them have stayed in touch over the years and close with the cast. I know that Chase and Jennifer performed with Bobby Burgess and Sharon Baird back at Disneyland. And there's always been this tie. And as Dale Godboldo, the founder of Always in the Club and former Mouseketeer, always says, every time that we do an event or something like this, the invitation goes out to everybody. Like, everybody. They definitely think of it as one family. So for sure, we don't hear a lot from the 70s Mouseketeers per se. Their show was really kind of short-lived. Same thing with Club Mickey Mouse, which was kind of a similar Facebooky version of it they did a couple of years ago. But that tie with the original cast is definitely there, the ones who are still with us.
Good. That way we can kill all the rumors of exclusionary behavior and going, no, we want the whole family involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The show, going back and watching some episodes and then realizing like just the level of talent that came out of it. Like, Jennifer became a talent agent and producing music and had so much going on behind the scenes for herself. You know, Chasen's still performing not only with his own band, but the party's still going. Tiffany, we mourn your loss, gone far too soon. You know, Lindsay's still performing. And then, you know, a couple of people, where'd they end up? NSYNC. Some dude just did a movie called The Fall Guy and Barbie or whatever. You know,
really obscure. You've probably never heard of it.
I've never heard of The Fall Guy. You know, I was telling somebody the other day about the movie, and I was like, the only thing I wish The Fall Guy did differently was that it was a continuation of the original series, where like Lee Majors was the elder statesman, kind of like Q for James Bond, and he's guiding the next generation along the way they did with Charlie's Angels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when the all new Mickey Mouse Club comes up in pop culture and things like that, people always want to focus on what we jokingly call the sexy six. But the truth of the matter is that, you know, your Ryan Goslings, your Brittany, Justin, Christina, they all came about very late in the game. And I don't think enough people acknowledge that there was a core group of Mouseketeers that really kind of set that tone of excellence and gave the show wings to fly so that they actually had a show to come on and build on. So I'm glad that the other people that you may not know as household names are starting to get their names out there.
Well, Dale should be a bigger household name. I mean, he's been in Thor. He was on 911. He's done a million other shows. Like, Dale is the first one, I think, to go back to Disney after leaving MMC to be part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, like, people got to pay attention to what's going on. You might recognize Dale's face over his name, but the dude's been working 35 years, literally, with this show.
They never stray far, I've noticed. That there always is something coming back. You know, Christina did a song for the Mulan soundtrack just a few years after the Mickey Mouse Club. Jennifer wound up performing with a group called American Vibe at Epcot for a few years. Dale in the MCU. It's like they're gone, but never that far, you know?
Right. Damon that still has the perfect hair, which I'm jealous of.
Yeah.
You know, it was one of those things where, like, I hope he goes gray at like 17, like Steve Martin, just so he has to be annoyed by the touch-ups.
No, he's keeping it tighter than anyone my age should be. So it's honestly unfair.
Yeah. You know, I know a couple of athletes that are retired that are in like their 60s, and I'm looking at them like, dude, you're in better shape than I was in my 20s.
It's true.
You know. So tell me, how do you go from like stand-up comedian and living in the San Diego area to becoming the social media manager of a show that you adored, and not blur the line between like being an MMC fanboy and now working with it, but like actually having that professional relationship with them?
It is a very interesting full circle story. The way I got started in show business was I had moved to Florida right about when I turned 18. And my goal of all goals was to get to a taping of the Mickey Mouse Club because I absolutely loved the show. I was such a huge fan of it. And I really just wanted to go to see the show. And that first day on the set, I can say without exaggeration, completely and totally changed the course of my life. I have always been a cartoonist and interested in drawing and things like that. But once I saw the process of how a television show is shot, I fell so completely in love with that. And I wanted to learn everything I could about it. It was thrilling to get to see the Mouseketeers in person, but it wasn't long before it kind of stopped being about them. And I just wanted to learn everything. So because I was over 18, and when I was about 18, I looked like I was about 15. So they were just like, the crew was very generous. And they were like, well, if you want to keep coming back, you know, we can really show you how all this works. So I started doing a lot of background work, a lot of extra work, a lot of stand-in work on the show. And because I looked younger, there's about 1 million shots of me in the audience going. And that really inspired me once the show got canceled to go to film school. And I wound up working in television for over 15 years. And everything I learned about performing, I kind of picked up from the Mouseketeers, and everything else I kind of picked up from the powers that be behind the scenes. And, you know, all these years later, I was in a musical called Spring Awakening. And in that show, it's a bunch of teenagers and there were 2 adults, and I was one of the adults. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. I wasn't on stage a lot of the time. So I'm backstage in the dressing room on my phone. And I thought, hey, wouldn't it be funny on Instagram if I just made an account where I posted pictures from the Mickey Mouse Club, and the 3 people out there who know it will follow it. So I started MMC Daily. And it wasn't long until that started to gain some traction. And it was really Jen that was kind of like the loudest cheerleader for that. And when I told her it was me, she was just like, oh my gosh, you're doing so well. And it really snowballed. And I kind of became the guy to go to because I know more about this show than probably anything else on earth. And I discovered in starting that there was a whole fan base still very much out there. And I didn't experience that when I was a kid. I didn't know anybody else who watched the show. So for me, it was a very personal thing. None of my friends watched it. It was on a pay channel, and not everybody had it like that back then. And I got very lucky, but reconnecting with all of these people, thousands and thousands of fans all over the country. And then with the start of Always in the Club, it just kind of came together. And it wasn't until recently where Dale was just like, we really need to have you be part of this, because it had gotten to the point where people started to think I was with Always in the Club anyway. I went on the party cruise last September, and I was meeting a lot of the fans, and they were like, "Oh, this is Anthony from Always in the Club." I'm like, you're, and and then it just kind of snowballed from there. So it was really a full circle moment, and how I went from being a fan of the show to someone who studied it and got to know the cast to someone who's now working for the organization that was founded by it.
Okay, now I'm mad. I didn't know about the cruise, and I love going on cruises.
Oh yeah, last September they it was a bay cruise, so it was like a one night thing. It wasn't like a European cruise yet. But the party
We can do a 3-day to Catalina Island and Ensenada.
I would make zero move to stop anybody from doing that, but it was the inaugural kind of party cruise last September in Tampa Bay, Florida, and it was while 90s Con was going on. And the party, basically they hosted a dinner on the boat, and Damon played an amazing DJ set, and they did some performances. It wasn't a full out concert, but all four of them were there, and they took questions from the audience. And it was one of those things where it was a very intimate event because there were only like 100 some odd people on the boat, and they were out and among us all night. It wasn't one of those things where you like get a picture with someone and then you don't see them again. You talk to them for 2 seconds. This was a very intimate setting, and it was really successful. So I did the wrap up of that on MMC Daily, because I always view as part of my responsibility is to make the people who can't go feel like they're a part of it. I want to show the people who are on the fence what they're missing by not coming to these events. And I want to show the people that for whatever reason couldn't be there, just kind of make them feel part of it. So it was a very natural thing that I kind of joined the fold. And yeah, the cruise was off the hook. They have to do another one. You got to go.
Yeah, keep me posted. And like I said, Catalina Ensenada, you're in San Diego, I'm in Huntington Beach. Make it a little closer to us.
Right? Yeah, because the only Mouseketeers who really live near us are Dale and Mylin.
Yeah, everybody else is in Florida because, no state income tax.
I know, right?
The funny thing with this, so I got to interview Jen when MouseCon hit in Bakersfield. A buddy of mine's like, "Are you going?" And I was like, "No, I got something else." But I looked at the list and I was like, "Oh, wow, Jennifer McGill is going to be there. I remember her from the Mickey Mouse Club." So I emailed her, and like she got back to me in like an hour and a half, which really surprised me.
Yeah.
Because I was like, "Oh, I won't hear from her maybe for like another 4 days if I get a response," just because that's what I'm so used to, in certain, like cold emails. And she was like, "Yeah, let's do it. We'll talk about, MouseCon and everything else." And she was incredibly cool about it. And then they did something with her previous company that she was working for in Nashville. And they're like, "Oh, do you want to talk to Jennifer again about this?" I was like, "Yeah, she was cool the first time. Why wouldn't I?" And, so she's always been awesome. When you get to sit there and you're like, "Oh yeah, Carrie Russell was on the show," and then everybody else, and then, like you said, Dale, who again deserves far more credit, and then Jennifer behind the scenes, who has done so much. Like, I'm surprised she's not a Disney executive at this point.
Where's her Disney Legend Award?
Seriously. She's too young to be a legend. That's the problem.
Right?
Yeah. And then that, like the what's it called? The side of her head that's shaved, like Mickey will be like, "Oh, you got to grow that out."
Well, there was a hair incident involving Chase on the show. I don't know if you know this story or not.
I don't know the story. Fill us in, because I've seen like his haircuts, and I remember how wild those were.
Oh yeah, well, his hair was so closely associated with his persona as a Mouseketeer, and then when he left the show to do the party full time, he had actually grown his hair out. And for the 7th season, there were a lot of changes that had happened at the Disney Channel, so they were really kind of retooling the show. Half of the cast were adults at this point, and they were really kind of thinking, how are we going to do this? And Chase and his dad, Bill Hampton, rest in peace, actually wrote a letter to the president of the Disney Channel pitching that he and Tiffany should come back and be the co-hosts. And they both flew to LA and sat down with them, and they made the decision. And when the powers that be finally agreed to have Chase come back to the show, they were like, "All right, but there's one thing. You got to cut your hair." He had this wild mane of red curly hair down past his shoulders because he was in his rock star era. So he buzzed his head, completely buzzed it. And insult to injury, about 3 weeks into shooting, they did a sketch in season 7 where Chase played the lead singer of a metal band, and they gave him a wig that was nearly identical to the hair he had to cut to come back to the show.
That's like a middle finger to the poor guy.
This is what I'm saying. But I love that story because it is so
Yeah, the problem is that's true to life. There's a professional wrestler named Frankie Kazarian. At one point got offered a WWE contract, and like, you got to cut your hair, and he wouldn't, so he was let go. And now Frankie's got short hair, and he's still going. So
I'm glad he stuck to his guns.
He did, but hey, Frankie made a killing, so I'm happy for Frankie Kazarian.
Yeah.
Interesting that we tied in professional wrestling to the all-new Mickey Mouse Club.
The Venn diagram is never that far. There's a lot of wrestling fans who are Mouseketeer fans as well.
There's a lot of them, though, probably wear ears to actually go compete in a pro wrestling show.
Several names spring to mind, yes.
They all live in Florida, too, so it's perfect. They're all in Orlando. So you get involved with this. You become the social media manager. You're pushing everything. There's a charity involved.
Yes.
With Always in the Club. How did the charity come about? Like, was the charity the catalyst, or was it to connect with the fans first, and then they're like, wait a minute, let's take this a step further, and we were known as charitable to our fans before. Let's do something and work with people that need help now.
It was always married from the beginning. That was always the idea. And I think one of the things that if you go back to the original series and you watch it, one of the things that the show really taught us was that the world is bigger than just you. And they were very much involved in charitable things then. They were very much involved in the environment, the conservation, social justice, all of these things. It all goes back to that original series, which was groundbreaking in a lot of ways. So when Always in the Club was really conceptualized, there was always going to be a philanthropic angle to it. So that from the beginning, and Dale has really been involved in that for many, many years, pre-Always in the Club. So this was a great way for him to reconnect with the fans of the show, get the band back together. That was really, one of the big things of getting this in started. And the charitable part of it is very much married to it. So that's why if you look at like our Instagram accounts, we have Always in the Club that kind of shows you what the Mouseketeers are up to now. We have 90s Mickey Mouse Club, which is my specialty of throwback. And then we have the AITC Foundation, which lets our fans know what we're working on now. And every single event that we've had, there's always been a charity partner to it. So it has been married to that from day one. And I think that will always be a part of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Because, sometimes it's treated as an afterthought or has come later on in the development of everything. And it's good to see that it's there from the get-go.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the coolest things that we did in an event was in 2021, we were a part of what's called the Diz Family Reunion, and that internet group, the Diz, and the Mouseketeers kind of came down and had a panel, but we also did something called the Be Great Awards, which was something that we partnered with Give Kids the World Village in Orlando, and honoring people who made outstanding contributions in their communities and stuff like that. And each one of the recipients was given their award by a different Mouseketeer. It was giving heavy Hall of Fame Day vibes. And it just brought you right back to that moment. And it reinforced how natural it is for them to be involved in something like this.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible, because we don't see enough of that.
No.
You hear about charity work, or you hear like you said, the photo op. Hey, we took photos, we disappeared into the bottom of the boat. Let them do their thing. We'll see them later, whatever. But being involved is so important. And the show, the way it was, felt like you almost knew the cast members.
Yes. And one thing that I realized, I definitely experienced this when I started to meet a lot of them while the show was in production, but particularly now, my perspective as someone who started off as a fan of the show, I didn't really relate to a lot of the kids in my neighborhood. I was a very odd duck. I was just different. And one of the reasons that the show spoke to me so much was because I identified with these kids so much. And years later, here we all are. And now I'm friends with so many of them in real life. And I know their real life core of who they are. Just about all of them are exactly who they were on that show, just an older version of it. And I really think a big part of that credit goes to a guy named Matt Casella, who was the casting director for the all-new Mickey Mouse Club. He hired every single one of those Mouseketeers, handpicked every single one of them. And he managed to find kids that were not only outrageously talented and camera ready and media trained, but they were very authentic in who they were. There's just a certain genuineness that you can't fake. I mean, yeah, you're being your best self on television, but the core of who you are shines through, and it has lined up almost perfectly for me, and that cracks me up. I tell people all the time, Damon is exactly who you think he is. He is that dude at 7 a.m. He is that dude at night. And yeah, so I love that there was no pretense. They really are those people.
See, that's incredible, man. And by the way, we should tell everyone how we met. So the funny thing
Yeah.
was, I had started following the '90s Mickey Mouse Club. Like Jen had so I follow Jen all the time. That sounds bad. That sounds almost stalkerish. Like,
Well,
but you know what I mean. Like her stuff pops up all the time. I was like, oh, that's cool. She did some like '90s Mickey Mouse Club thing. I was like, oh, cool. Let's follow this. And then and you posted that you were going to be at D23.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, I should follow this guy. And like, you still haven't accepted. I think because I followed your personal one, not your professional one.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'll run into him. And I totally forgot about it. I'm actually walking by the Disney Channel booth. Surprise, surprise. And here comes Anthony. I was like, wait a minute, I need to talk to you. And he looks at me because I'm like a, whole head taller than Anthony. He's like, who the hell is this monster wanting to talk to me?
No, I honestly, I was shocked you knew who I was. I don't, for some reason, I don't know how I haven't.
But my approach was, I need to talk to you. And you're like, okay.
Sure. Yeah. I thought you were about to kick me out. I thought you were security. I'm like, I'm sorry.
I get that all the time, man.
No, because I still, for some reason, as many years as I've been doing this and kind of like being the face of this fandom, I'm still surprised that anybody actually A, sees it, or B, recognizes me. But I've been recognized out in the world in real life, and that is wild to me. So I'm sure, and it still takes me a minute to be like, wait, how do you know oh, right, that whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The funny thing is, you were surprised at a Disney convention.
Yeah. Yeah. I was there with some friends from out of town, and it kind of happened last minute that we were going, and it was one of my friend's birthdays. So I was just kind of running back and forth to panels, and I had a couple hours because some folks were in some panels that I didn't so much care about. And like you said earlier, it is sensory overload. There was so much to see. And I live in the city where Comic-Con happens. And I keep calling it Disney Comic-Con because it is that level of just intense. So I was just kind of walking around, and I wasn't aware where I was half the time anyway. So I was very glad you found me.
Yeah. And it was just by happenstance. And Kismet is the Aramaic word for fate. So Kismet is like Aramaic, Hebrew, even in Arabic, Kismet is the word. And it was just fate that it happened in front of the Disney Channel booth.
Right.
Yeah. For what Anthony mentioned earlier, that it was behind the paywall. So Disney Channel used to be a premium channel before it became a basic cable channel in probably around 93, 94. So prior to that, you had to have a subscription to Disney Channel like HBO. So for you children out there whose parents are making you watch this, we had to pay for Disney Plus back then too.
It's true. And back then, Disney Plus decided what it was showing us, not what we were watching.
Right.
I have the hardest time explaining to young people what appointment television was.
Right. Setting the VCR.
That is very much what the Mickey Mouse Club was. And I get asked nearly every day, why is the all-new Mickey Mouse Club not on Disney Plus? And a big part of that is that there is a world of difference between programming for a broadcast cable channel and streaming content. And I made a video about it, and it was just this long explanation, but it's a whole different animal. And if you didn't grow up with like that kind of appointment viewing of how we watch television, it's really hard to explain now.
And also, we'll make it even simpler, music rights. They did so many cover songs that in order to get the rights to all that music, Disney has to now buy like 3 more record labels.
Yeah, in excess of about 400 songs, because it wasn't just songs the Mouseketeers did. There were music day guests, there was incidental music, there was a whole bunch of stuff, not even getting into the estates of some of the people who appeared on the show who are no longer with us. And the language didn't even exist because streaming didn't exist. Like TV shows in 1989 were not made with the thought of people are going to own this and watch it at will. Right. Because, if you remember back then, the only TV shows that were on VHS were like I Love Lucy and stuff from the 50s. So it was, don't get me wrong, I respect the mid-2000s cash grab DVD release, the best of Justin, Brittany, and Christina, and I would love to see more of that, but it's just not a good ROI. There's no return on that investment for Disney. They certainly have the money, but there's more to it than that, and it's sometimes hard to kind of explain that to people who are unfamiliar with how that industry works.
You know what the new return on investment for that would be?
What's that?
Creating the all new Mickey
A
Mouse
new.
Club. And
Mhm.
since Jen worked with so much young talent that were
Mhm.
musicians and performers, licensed their original music for the series instead of licensing covers.
Well, and that's the other thing, that our version of the show that we watched was the first incarnation of the Mickey Mouse Club to have cover songs on it. Everything else was original material for the first two series. And but it was reaching out to what kids of that era wanted to hear and see and do. And it's still silly as all get out to me that you've got two 12-year-olds singing "Cry for You" by Jodeci, but that was what teenagers back then wanted to see. And yeah, even the Club Mickey Mouse thing that they did a couple years ago, that was original music too. So it's like it's a beast to try to wrangle it from like a legal standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, logistically. It's just, yeah, it would be hard, but I would love to see a best of series. That would be great.
Right. And for fans of the all-new Mickey Mouse Club, here's a bit of trivia for you. Anthony might not have dawned on him at some point, but when they did sing Blame It on the Rain, it was actual Mouseketeers singing it, not a backing track.
And fun fact about Milli Vanilli's appearance on the show, they filmed that in season 3, and that was pretty much when they were at the height of their popularity, but it wasn't long after they aired it that the scandal happened. And the following season, they actually filmed a whole new Music Day segment with Tara Kemp. Do you remember her? She sang Hold You Tight.
Wow, yeah.
So they refilmed a whole Music Day segment with Tara Kemp and dropped it into the Milli Vanilli episodes. So in reruns, you would see the original episode, and then all of a sudden for Music Day, the Mouseketeers are all noticeably a whole year older, and it's Tara Kemp. So they went back and they messed with it a lot.
Right. Yeah.
But
whereas they could have just had everybody else sing the parts and no one would have known the difference.
Right. But Milli Vanilli got lucky because it was actually season 4 when the Music Day guests started to use live mics. Before then, everybody lip synced. So of course, Milli Vanilli would have been right at home there.
It was perfect for that. So yeah, so that's your fun Milli Vanilli fact, especially with their biopic coming out soon.
Yeah. How about that? That's honestly, it was funny to all of us back in the day, but it honestly was really kind of a sad cautionary tale because they certainly weren't the first.
No.
They were just the ones that got caught the worst. And
ratted out by the guys that did it.
Right. And and the music industry, I could do a whole other episode. I have studied a lot. There are things that are common practice in the music industry that are illegal in every other form of business. And I think it's a tragic story, not just because one of them passed away, but it's the story of two young performers. Basically, they got took.
It's the ultimate cautionary tale of what are you willing to do to be famous.
It's true.
But let's talk about a happier note, because this is the 35th anniversary of the Mickey Mouse Club.
Sure is.
You have, I believe, the original logo shirt, or is it the 90s shirt where Mickey is in the polo instead of just the headshot?
No, he's in the polo, but this was the 89 through 92 version of the logo, and probably the most recognizable one. And then the one behind your head is the season 6 MMC logo, and they kind of took that a bit further in season 7. But yeah, 35 years. And 5 years ago, we had MMC 30, which was the first time that so many of the Mouseketeers were together again, were performing on stage again, and thousands of fans attended. I was there. It was one of the greatest nights of my life. And it basically was one of those moments where I think Dale and Chase and everybody with always in the club really, for the first time, got to see how impactful all of this was and how much people wanted more and that they weren't done. And I've spoken to so many Mouseketeers over the years, because it was pre-internet, they really felt like they were shouting into a void, and there was no real-time transactional success of how the show was doing. You know what I mean? Like they didn't know. They didn't know what the reach of it was. They would get lots of fan mail, and occasionally when the party would go out, fans would scream, but they didn't know how big it was, and they didn't know how lasting it was. And I think a lot of them had a very jarring moment at MMC 30 that, no, really, this is still very much a thing.
Right. And then 90s Con just happened this past weekend in Florida.
That's next month.
Oh, that's next month. For some reason, I thought it was last week.
If it was last week, I'd be in big trouble because I'm supposed to be there.
You were supposed to be there. So when the ladies that do 90Con brought Christmas Con to California, so Anthony can attest to what I look like in person at 6'3" and 290 pounds.
Very long human.
Yes, I sound like this, right? But I am a big goof. So like I can, and my background is wrestling and judo. Like combat sports is the world I grew up in. Yeah, I'll sit there. I was like, Hallmark Christmas movie. I could watch this, goofy Disney kids show, but I was a goofy kid at the time. I could watch this. Oh, let's reminisce about that. So I was that kid that was like, I could beat the hell out of you and then go to the comic book store. So like, I didn't really fit in any world and then still like maintain a 3.7 GPA. So it was like that whole, where the hell do you fit in type thing, And so this is what's fun in talking to people like Anthony and then former child stars and everybody else. But what I've noticed in your interaction with them and their social media presence, and there as in MMC, there isn't this bitterness of, I was this child star and everyone only talks about this window of time when I was something in this realm to them. And I've done so much more than that. Like they accept that this was their youth and are thrilled to have branched out into a million other things that they've done.
Yeah, well, and if we're keeping it a stack here, there was a good stretch of time, probably right after the series had ended, or about a 10-year stretch where they weren't really down to talk about this, because when you are a kid and you get into this business and you kind of taste that success, you're very eager to show the world how grown you are. And you don't want to be tied to Disney forever. And you don't want to be, sometimes you run as hard as you can the other way, Christina. But, other times.
I never met her. That's on you.
But before I get in trouble, I'll move on. And I actually talked to Dale about that a couple of years ago, because I was like, what changed? Was it age? Was it time? And he really said that MMC 30 and other things like that, once they understood the impact that it had, I think a lot of them kind of, not that everyone had a bad relationship with it, but they kind of healed that relationship and understood that, no, really, this set an incredible tone for the rest of your career. And while not all of them are in the business anymore, a lot of them have continued on, and success has many meanings. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is more in this, and working in this business as long as I have, I understand that true success is when your only job is doing what you love. And that doesn't always mean you're a household name. It doesn't always mean you're at the top of the charts. Like Ricky Luna is a great example. If I were to say the name Ricky Luna, most people wouldn't know who that was, but the dude is worldwide successful as a producer and DJ and remixer. He's got Latin Grammys. He's got some of the most streamed music on Spotify, and he loves what he does. And you wouldn't know it, but I think a lot of them definitely kind of had that eye-opening experience when they saw, because a lot of the fans of this show, and Lord knows I talked to enough of them, but so many people who watched this show as a result of the show are now, working as educators. They work in social work. They, that many of them went into the military, acts of service, and in the private sector. And it really, those waves, I think, were very unseen by the Mouseketeers until it was literally in front of their faces. Right. So I think a lot of them very much embrace that part of it, except for Jen, who was down with it from day one.
Yeah, repeat that last line, because you cut out just a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Except for Jen, who was down from day one, that she was always willing to talk about the show. Jennifer McGill is the biggest fan of this show on earth.
She told me one story where it was shortly after the show got canceled. So 96 was the show got canceled. And then 97 or 8, because she had gone to prom with Joey Fatone.
Yep.
That she went to a record release in New York, because I think she was at NYU or was over there. And then people recognized her. I was like, this story would be so much funnier if it was an NSYNC thing, because 2/3 of the group were Mouseketeers.
That is true.
But like that she had to be whisked away because everybody was the right age to not only be a Backstreet Boys fan, but also a Mickey Mouse Club fan.
No, that's it's funny because again, when I was a kid, I didn't know anybody who watched it. So to me, it was just this nebulous thing. And I meet people who are kind of our age in their 40s and stuff like that. And there was a gal that I performed with in a couple of shows, and she never said anything to me. And then not too long ago, she was finally like, okay, I have to confess something to you. And I'm like, what? And she's like, I am so jealous that you're friends with the party. They were like my life as a teenager. I'm like, oh my God. Why don't you say something? But
you're like, I'm having dinner with them on Tuesday. You want to go?
Seriously, like, yeah, and it's just so great to me. And I call a lot of because I've also formed a lot of great relationships through this fan base. And actually, all the people I was at D23 with are friends I made through the Mickey Mouse Club, and I call them my adult childhood friends.
I like that. That's a good catchphrase.
Yeah, well, because we have this commonality, and I was at an event maybe 10 years ago in LA, because Rona and I have always stayed in touch through the years. So she invited me to this listening party she was having for some music she was working on. And I had gone to the event, and she and I were talking, and there was a bunch of industry people there. And someone asked Rona how she and I knew each other. And she just smiled and went, we grew up together.
I like that. That's a good answer.
And man, if I didn't have to be like, that's right.
You're a crier, I can tell.
Man, I that got to me. That got to me. Well, and like, here's the thing, because I have this working professional relationship with just about all of them, but yet there's still this little part of me that is just like, that's so cool. The Musketeers are my friends. It's just, it never stops being so wonderfully weird. Even with all the time we spent together and all the adventures we've had, it just still in the back of my head, I just think of 13-year-old me who just wished he could meet Albert and be friends with him, and and just it's just the coolest thing.
And how do we convince the 90s Con people to bring 90s Con to California? Because I tried when they did Christmas Con out here, and they're just like, "Well, think about it," and they're like, "No."
Yep. Yeah.
They're based in the East Coast, so it's close to home for them.
Yeah.
But
no, the first 90s Con appearance that the Mouseketeers made was in Hartford, Connecticut, in March. And I'm like, y'all, don't you understand? There's weather over there. Like, come to California where it's warm and beautiful. And then they didn't quite take my suggestion and went to Florida. So, hopefully, I'm always happy, obviously, from a very selfish point of view, whenever we have some West Coast events. And there have been a few, but yeah, 90s Con, definitely. Because when I went out for the party cruise last year, I used to live in Florida. I was unprepared for that humidity, man. That was, I was struggling.
All right. So I do have to tell people this that have never been to Disney World. And I will tell you, my ultimate disappointment in Disney World is not the theme park.
Okay.
It is everybody that lied to me that said the Magic Kingdom was bigger than Disneyland. For people that have never been, it is not bigger, it is wider. Everything is far more spread out. The way everyone made it seem was that like Main Street was towering over the neighborhood, and that like you couldn't see the fireworks because the buildings were so high. It's spread out. So if someone tells you it's bigger, they mean wider and more landmass.
Yeah, well, and I grew up, because I'm originally from the East Coast. I grew up going to Disney World, and it wasn't until I moved to California, I was like 23, and it took me like 10 years to go to Disneyland. I don't know why, but eventually I went, and I was shocked.
We're about to revoke your Disney card at this point. It took you 10 years to get here, and you work for people that are friends of the mouse.
Well, those two didn't exactly line up at that time, but yeah, by the time I finally went there, and like Disneyland has my heart now. That is my favorite of the parks. And then I went back to Florida, and I literally was in the Magic Kingdom, and I just kind of looked around and went, this is literally Disneyland on steroids. Like, I could not believe just how far apart everything was. And I'm gonna age myself here. Back in my day, when I was going to Disney MGM Studios every day for the Mouse Club tapings, you could walk from one place to the next. And now it's all planes, trains, and automobiles, and you can't get anywhere quickly. And I always say that's the ultimate flex for the California parks, is that you can go from one park to the other in less than 2 minutes.
Right. Yeah, I didn't need a boat to get to my car.
You did not.
And especially going from Disneyland to California Adventure.
Yeah, no, it's just right there. It is shell shock if you've never been. Just the difference in scope.
What is it about working with them and the charity itself? Like, what is, Let's not use the word altruistic in this regard, and let's not. I don't want to make it sound like, you know, those people that like beat their chest, the humble brag people.
Right.
All right. But when you guys get to do this charity work and see the effect that it has, not only on fans, but people who aren't even fans that are affected by the charity, what does that do for you as a person to want to keep moving forward, and especially with Always in the Club?
Very much like when I started doing background work and anything they would let me do on the show, how it started off as one thing and then turned into something very different and more special. It's kind of the same experience with Always in the Club. I've been to just about every event that we've done, and it really, the fact that there is skin in the game with these guys, and you can tell they're not just, it's not just this cardboard cutout of, you know, them cutting a check or something like that. It's like they partner with these things and they really kind of get in the dirt with it. They really, like with MMC 30, the Pulse Foundation was one of the charities that they partnered with, and with Give Kids the World Village. And right now, the event that we're working on that's going to be happening in Las Vegas is going to be an awards ceremony that's going to honor people in veterans and the community building space. When you see how much they care about this and how involved they are, yeah, it's great to get together and have a concert and have everybody hang out, but you really see the difference. You know, the Give Kids the World thing, that thing got me, because they're, you know, they honored a child who had who had helped so many families, and this kid's like 10. And you know, you see the Mouseketeers, because so many of them have kids of their own now, that you can't fake that kind of care. And that, to me, is what makes the biggest difference, because, you know, this is, for me personally, this is one way that I can help out. And it's always been about everybody kind of pitches in, and as a collective, we help try to make this place a little bit better than we found it.
And now let's remind people, this is going to be October 25th and 26th at the Red Rock in Las Vegas.
Uh-huh. Yeah, there are some really special things planned for that. So many of the Mouseketeers, it is a masquerade ball and meetup, and then the following night is going to be the gala awards. But for the meetup and masquerade, there's going to be a costume contest, but many of the Mouseketeers will be reviving characters they actually played on the show. And I know a few things that are coming, and it is going to be off the chain. And yeah, it's going to be a good time. It is always a party when everybody gets together, pun fully intended, but this is going to be next level. It's really just, I think it's going to be a legendary nights to remember.
I'm getting some Vic Slick vibes, only
yeah,
more raspy and chain smokery.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what 49-year-old Vic Slick is like.
Yeah, he's got to get like a bald skull cap.
Yeah,
just with like Homer Simpson strands of hair.
I really feel like Damon probably wound up much hotter later in life than Vic Slick would have. So I hope he takes that into account. And I've been keeping
like,
on top.
We're pitching this to him now, man.
I know. Yeah. Well, and I was talking to Dale not too long ago, because he's going to be playing Slick Farley, which was a last season character that he did. And I don't know if you're familiar with the original, but he got to really kind of create this character. And he wanted to pitch it as like a Dolomite type with like long, relaxed hair and the pimp walk and the pimp cane. And Disney's like, yeah, no. So they brought it to like a Jerry curl, and he's got the costume, and it's going to be a very silly and amazing, fun night.
Well, on the bright side, we're all old enough not to need chaperones. So it's going to be a little more wilder than the Mickey Mouse Club. Think of it as Disney After Dark.
Yes. No, that was definitely me in Anaheim 2019. They did a after-hours celebration during D23 at Ralph Brennan's Jazz Kitchen in downtown Disney. And that had an open bar. And Lindsay kicked off the night with her incredible show. And Tony played a set. And Eric B. of Eric B. and Rakim showed up late night and DJ'd a set. We went hard in the paint that night, and it was amazing.
Yeah, they were stumbling down Main Street, USA, singing the Mickey Mouse Club theme song.
I can neither confirm nor deny the steadiness of anyone's stumble, which is such a social media manager way to say that.
It is very true. And I hope whoever you're dating can be accepting of your Disney ways and doesn't sit there and go, you know what? I was just never a cartoon kid.
Well, here's the thing. My partner is a little bit older, and he doesn't remember the show because it was past his time. But he obviously, because we've been together for so many years, he has gotten to know a lot of these people. He literally refers to the Mouseketeers as your Mickey Mouse friends.
Well,
You know, and
hold on. That's fair because you are also friends with Brett Iwin, who is the voice of Mickey Mouse.
he just joined our board, and I will again, I'll keep it 100. I have yet to meet Brett.
Oh, you haven't met him yet?
I have not met him yet. This is still
Nicest guy in the world.
Just joined the board. And I was talking to a really dear friend of mine, Patty Adams, who is also on the board, and she worked for Disney for 25 years, so she's met him several times. And I'm like, "You're gonna introduce me to Brett, right? Like, you're gonna make that happen? Yeah." I'm very excited for him to turn up at something because I love him.
Just wait a few weeks before you ask him to do Mickey as your outgoing message.
You know, I can play it cool. That's fine.
Just couple of weeks.
I can play it cool. Well, and I will tell you, last weekend I got to tour the Disney Animation Studios up in Burbank.
How awesome is that place?
And they don't give public tours of it. So I was able to go in there, and I was with a guy named Steve Anderson who directed Meet the Robinsons, the new Winnie the Pooh movie. Awesome guy. And we're just getting started. We just got there, my group of friends, and we start talking. And then all of a sudden down the hall comes Eric Goldberg. Now, if you don't know who Eric Goldberg is, I have a Kem Weber desk tattoo, like animation. Like, I'm that big into it. I'm a cartoonist. I drew all this. That's my day job. This man is like Elvis.
Mm-hmm.
He was responsible for so much of the animation during the Renaissance period. He is single-handedly responsible for the genie in Aladdin. This guy's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get starstruck very often. Like, I have seen famous people. They're just people. I've walked up to a lot of people. I could not contain myself when this dude, this little elfin man, just turned and made his way down the hallway, and he stopped briefly to talk to Steve. And I literally just walked up to him and went, "I'm sorry, I have to shake your hand. I'm Anthony Donovan, and I worship you."
I'm surprised he didn't give you a hug because Eric is the type to do that.
I don't want to make it weird. And
First of all, it's Eric Goldberg, so nothing is ever weird with Eric. That's the funny part.
But you finally get that chance to shoot that shot. This guy, I have been in awe of this man since I was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and that was nearly 5 years ago. So,
Right.
But incredible opportunity to meet him. So I'm gonna be a little bit cooler when I eventually meet Brett, but
Right.
It's still gonna be. I mean, the Disney fandom runs deep, and for so many of us, it has just been a part of our lives and our careers. Like for you and I, that's a great example. And I was probably around 11 years old when I fell deeply in love with the art of Disney animation.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied everything I could. And this was pre-internet. So I read every book, watched every TV special. And, these guys were my heroes.
Yeah, like I did a pre-interview leading up to D23 with Andrea Deja. And yeah, he's an incredible guy, amazing story. I talked to Eric last year, and even in the video towards the end of it, I was like, "Eric, thanks you for your time." He's like, they can't get me to shut up. And I'm just dying. I was just like,
really good Eric Goldberg.
because that's the way Eric talks, and it's hilarious. And he's the nicest guy. Like, they sent me the book that he made for review several years ago. This was D23, I think 2015 or 17, whatever it was. Took it. He's like, "Here you go," and he's just signing it, and it's just like, if it smudges, it smudges. Who cares? You can still read it. Like, that was just Eric's whole personality, and so if you ever get to meet Eric Goldberg, nicest dude in the world. Floyd Norman's incredible. Like, just to hang out. Like, the fact that the guy is retired and they still give him a key card to go, "Yeah, come hang out."
Yeah. Well, I mean, Eric is also retired, and he just happened to be in the building that day, visiting the old stomping grounds, and all of a sudden
Eric was just there for lunch.
Crazy guy in a Newsies cap who's shaking and murmuring something about the Mickey Mouse Club. That's
right. And I was just teasing. I was like, Eric was just there for lunch, because Eric would just show up for lunch.
Yeah. No, there's great people involved, and I also really love that Disney has started to kind of embrace Always in the Club.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a very slow kind of marriage, and it's one of those things where we value that relationship so much. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the Mouseketeers were able to participate in a D23 panel 2 years ago on the Walt Disney Archive stage. That was incredible. And I will just never forget it, because I have jokingly called the all new Mickey Mouse Club the redheaded stepchild of the Walt Disney Company. Because it's like, when they launched the Eras thing,
Don't tell Jason that.
I'm like, oh, finally, and nothing. But I'm glad that they have slowly kind of started to embrace us as an organization.
Like I said, don't tell Jason the redheaded stepchild thing.
Oh, believe me, he knows.
As everything progresses, the next big event is 90s Con next week in Daytona Beach, Florida, I believe.
Next month.
Next month. I'm sorry. I keep wanting to,
September 13th
it to be in
through the
September
15th.
for something. What's that?
September 13th through the 15th.
There we go. Yeah, I keep forgetting we're still in August.
I know.
June and July took forever, and then Comic-Con hit, and I'm like, wait a minute, it's almost September?
Seriously. I mean, I'm excited. I've never been to a 90s Con, and I'll be there with Always in the Club, so I'm excited. I don't know that there's anybody I'm particularly hyped to meet, but my bucket list meet is actually Joey Fatone.
Okay.
For a very odd reason. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Just ask Jen for his number,
right? And we've discussed it, and people who know him have texted him on my behalf. But the reason I want to meet him is because I discovered a couple of years ago, my dad was a musician. He still is, actually. He's 76 and still working. He sucks at retirement, but he's always played music, and he was a part of a vocal group when he first moved to Florida. And I didn't discover this until just a couple of years ago, that one of the guys he was in that group with was Joseph Fatone Sr. And my dad just kind of offhandedly mentions that. I'm like, are you kidding me? Do you know who that is? So I want to meet Joey Fatone to tell him our dads were in a group together. Right. And I could not get near that dude at MMC 30.
Isn't that the way it always works?
I know, because everybody's like, you didn't meet him? You did? Because people are usually shocked because they know the relationship I have with the Mouseketeers. And they're like, you haven't met Joey Fatone? I'm like, no.
Your relationship with Joey Fatone is my relationship with Nicolas Cage.
Seriously.
I at San Francisco State University, I took a film class with his dad. I've interviewed his son, Weston. I've interviewed his cousin, Talia Schreier. I've interviewed her son as well, because they released the, I think, 35th anniversary of Rad, and like all this stuff. So I am a literal 1 degree circling the drain separation from Nicolas Cage, and I still haven't met Nick Cage.
I hope that you and I can cross those off the list, and then find some other weirdly specific celebrity to put at the top of the list again.
Anthony, this is how weird I want it to get, is that when you and I are at Disneyland, we run into Nick Cage and Joey Fatone together.
That would be, talk about kismet. Yeah.
Like, let's just go for the ultimate weirdo. How are we going to make this happen?
Yeah. Like, and how would either of us explain to them what we're doing?
Right. We were in the Disney Emporium, and then all of a sudden,
yep.
As everything goes along with the 35th anniversary, is there going to be, has Disney decided to do a reunion special episode? Is there a documentary that's independently made, unaffiliated with Disney, that you guys are looking to do? Because this is a big deal, and nobody looks like they're in their 40s to begin with. So let's let everybody in on a secret of Gen X.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And this is my favorite meme that I've seen about Gen X. We were 30 at 10 years old, and we're 30 at 50 years old. Like, that's just it.
Very true.
Is there anything going on for that? Other than Vegas and Daytona, is there like a special anniversary concert? Or
there's
anniversary live variety show?
There's nothing I can speak about at this point with certainty, because a lot of it is a process to put these kind of things together. The team is small but mighty, and a lot of times they try to be mindful about what they do and when. And as far as any Disney involvement goes, like I said, it's kind of on and off, and that relationship is tenuous, and I'm not the person in charge of that. I will tell you that the celebration of the 35th anniversary is definitely going to be part of 90s Con. We're going to be doing a little something, because you can't have that many Mouseketeers in one place, plus the party, and not do something. So I will say that.
And an hour and 30 minutes away from Disney World.
And there's also, as far as Vegas goes, there's going to be something special going on with that. As far as Disney's involvement, I would assume, because again, I can't say with any certainty. My personal assumption is that the decade markers are probably more important. Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling that once we hit MMC 40, that might be a whole different thing altogether. But we do these events several times a year, so the celebration is going to keep going. And any excuse to get these guys together is a good one. So
hold on, finish that thought. I'll interject mine afterwards.
No, and any excuse to get these guys together is a good one. So you'll definitely see more in terms of like live events.
Well, just remember, MMC 40 is the same year as Disneyland 75.
That's true. That is also true. All right. I'm just saying, I got to call in all the guys I know behind the scenes, see what we can do.
Listen, I got no stroke, but I can just suggest a bunch of stuff.
Absolutely. I hear suggestions every day.
Yeah. Some of them really bad, some of them decent, and then you got, meatheads like me that are going, that'd be fun.
Well, I mean, of course it would all be fun, but there's just like the realistic chances of certain things happening and other things like that. But then again, one thing I have learned from my involvement with this group is never say never, because they've been able to pull off some things that I would have never in a million years guessed would have been possible. So sky's the limit as far as I'm concerned.
Is there anything for Vegas, Masquerade Ball, Halloween time, recreating characters from 35 years ago? Is there? Oh, well, I'll get to that in a moment. This is something that just dawned on me before that. I'm sorry. No, let's set that up as a teaser, and we're like, these guys just keep babbling. Everybody's IMDb page, except for like 3 people, have their MMC photo of them eating something. Was that by design?
No, no, it is not. That's just a happy coincidence.
Okay. Like everyone's got some sort of pastry or ice cream or something. So I just wanted to ask that. But what can you give us a sneak peek of for Vegas?
Well, I will tell you, one of the things that I particularly like about the Vegas show is that you're going to see a lot of deep cut references in the show. Like this is not the show for casual fans. I think there's going to be something there for everybody, but the day one diehard fans of the show, you're not going to believe what you're going to see. Like it's going to be, and I love that the Mouseketeers themselves are kind of having to revisit old footage, kind of pull up these old sketches and see, just to kind of study where they're going with it. And I think it's just going to be one of those things where if you know, and it's going to be really incredible. And if you don't know, at a bare minimum, it's going to be very entertaining.
Any press passes being offered?
You got to talk to Dale. That is not my bag.
Doesn't hurt to actually, you
miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Exactly. We'll go from there. So for Vegas, since it is a Masquerade Ball, who are you dressing up as? Or is that got to be a major surprise?
I do not know. I do not know. I actually have a bit of a conflict with that, so I might be out of the country when this is happening. And if that's the case, I'm going to be very sad. But I'm still working on. I definitely have an idea in mind.
You got to pull out some like Fred shirts at least,
right? But no, I would honestly. No, I'm not gonna say it, but it would be definitely, because I nerd out so hard with this show. There are jokes on it that I still quote to this day that the average person would not understand. But then when I'm at MMC 30 or one of our events, I can make a joke like that, and somebody's like, I see what you did there.
What's the deep cut joke that you make that like someone's like, got it? Okay,
so from season 2, there was a sketch that absolutely.
Oh my God, you're a Trekkie.
Oh yeah. Oh, without a doubt. It is frightening.
This is like Trekkie level, like MMC. Okay.
Yes. Season 2, there was a sketch called Miss Molly's Magic Mirror, and Moeva was in this blonde wig, and she played like this very ethereal kind of, hi, boys and girls, hi. And she's looking in her magic mirror and seeing the names of the children. She's like, I see Danny, I see Jennifer, I see, and the mirror keeps short circuiting. And she finally gets so frustrated that she hits it, And she calls the repair shop and she's like, 2 weeks in the shop. I gotta go. And Damon plays the repair guy. And he's like, well, it was working just fine here. I saw Cubby and I saw Tommy. And he's like, I don't know, lady, just try hitting it. She's like, all right, fine. She hangs up the phone. She slaps the mirror. And the first image that comes up is a girl who jolts and starts holding her face. And she goes, oh, I see Karen. Sorry, Karen. And for some reason, that sorry, Karen is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. To this day, I will still say to somebody, sorry, Karen. And it wasn't until I was at MMC 30 when a friend of mine, I said it, and she's like, magic mirror. And I'm like, yes, these are my people.
And now you just want to start slapping random Karens, so it works.
Well, yes, yeah. I'm less sorry about Karen than I was in 1989, but yeah, there are definitely deep cuts from the show. And honestly, speaking of people that I completely fanboy over, I about a year ago got to meet my favorite writer from the show, a guy named Stephen Weiner. And he was responsible for the first 4 seasons. He was on that writing team. And this guy inspired me to write comedy for television, which I did for many years. And honestly, when I met him, I was totally starstruck. And he was so shocked that I knew all of these references from these things he had written all these years ago. And he would start talking about something and I would complete the line because I'd seen it so many times. And yeah, it was absolutely a mind-blowing moment. And he and his wife are just lovely people and they still text every few weeks. And yeah, so the people who know the show, it's always been that kind of, if you know secret language. Vegas is for you. Like, for everything that I know that they're pulling out, it's going to be one to remember.
All right, so this is what I got to ask, since we're going to Florida first. Well, you are. I'm not going this time around.
All
right, I know, man.
Watch Nick Cage show up with Joey Fatone.
Right, Nick Cage shows up with Joey Fatone, and they're gonna like reenact, something from what's it called? What's an obscure Nick Cage movie? Not even an obscure one.
On Air.
No, what's it called? Moonstruck.
Oh, is that obscure?
No, I said forget obscure. I backed out of the obscure one.
All right.
We don't need that deep of a Nick Cage cut.
That's true.
Yeah. But with everything that's going on, Florida's coming up. This is coming up. Any specific like charity things that we got to keep our eye on, and how do we get involved if we want to be like supportive of the charity or become a club member?
That is an excellent question. Always in the Club does offer memberships that are tiered. And the cool thing about joining that club is that the club members find out first about all of these events before the general public, usually about a week out. And one of the things that the fans had kind of written to the organization and asked for was more notice on these things and how to get an in. And so you can go to MickeyMouseClubReunion.com, or we've also set up another site called MMC35.org. And they will give you all the information of how to sign up for the club membership tiers. And more importantly, all of our charity partners can be found on both of those sites. Awesome. All the different organizations that we've worked with. I don't know that they've announced everything for Florida yet, so I don't want to say for sure, but we've definitely got the, what is it called? I knew I was going to forget the name. The Golden Victor Awards, which is going to be part of honoring, again, the veterans and the service community. And that's for Vegas, but you can find out all these different things. And there's been so many great charity partners over the years, like Cast Member Pantry, Give Kids the World. And yeah, you can definitely go to either one of those websites and get more information. And they're always taking tax deductible donations. And it's a great way to get involved.
And any like exclusive merchandise that you guys are selling? Anyone trying to get a Letterman?
Actually, there's going to be some brand new merchandise debuting at 90s Con, designed by your boy. So I'm really excited about that. And it's been a great way to merge my day job and my longtime love of art with my fandom, with what I'm doing now. So we have come up with some stuff that I think the fans are really going to like. And yeah, so we're very excited about that, with more to come.
Right. See, I just stole this background from the internet. Anthony actually drew his.
Good.
Yeah. Any sneak peeks that we could look at? Is it like t-shirts? Is it like coats? Is it like, because a jacket in Florida makes perfect sense.
Yeah, right. Well, and speaking of jackets, I'm going to put this out to the universe now and tell you and everybody watching that it is the dream of my life to someday own the original MMC jacket with like the red sleeves and they sold them back in the 90s. I was a child and did not have money, and I'm not going to pay $4,000 on eBay for one. But anyway, so I'm just putting that out for my own selfish reasons. But you can definitely expect some new t-shirts. We have a couple of other, like maybe some patches and pins coming along, and it's all very much done in the aesthetic of the original club membership from 1989.
Nice.
So that is all I will say about that. But again, if you will recognize this look immediately.
Can we get them as holiday gifts since the holidays are around the corner?
Exactly. For the MMC fan in your life, or a gift to yourself. Because if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love anybody else?
This is true. Or you could just be one of those selfish people that are like, I only shop for myself at Christmas time.
Exactly. And, if you come to 90s Con and get these, I'm sure you could probably, a Mouseketeer or two wouldn't be far away. You might be able to get it signed, just.
Or 8.
And shoot your shot.
This is true. Maybe do a party sing-along.
Exactly. I mean, that kind of always happens anyway. And it's like, I love that the atmosphere of these things gets more familial and just a little wilder and a little more fun every single time, because with MMC 30, so many thousands of fans converged on that, and a lot of us didn't know each other. When I went to MMC 30, I knew one person, and everyone else I knew was either a Mouseketeer or worked on the show. And I met so many people, and it's like we come back together with so many of these same people, and I've made incredible friends, and so many friendships have formed, and it turns into a family reunion, and it's wonderful to see the Mouseketeers. But at this point, a lot of these people come to this thing to see their friends, and it's been a beautiful thing to watch.
Or you end up going at D23 and someone looks at me or looks like me. It sounds like they're threatening you when they said we need to talk.
Or you meet a friend you hadn't met yet.
There you go. But I am relatively pleasant people, so if Anthony can tolerate me,
Yeah. Again, I was a little worried you might throw me out when you first encountered me, but I was,
Yeah, I kind of squared up a little hard. That's like,
okay, you came in peace. I understand.
I was like, I got to talk to you. And I'm like, uh-oh. But yes, I come in peace. That's the sequel to this interview that's coming on. You can join the Mickey Mouse Club through mmcreunion.com. There's a membership there. There's all sorts of crazy discounts. For people like me that like Costco, there's a discount for Costco and other theme parks.
Club members get dozens of discounts on everyday things that we as adults use.
Right. Unfortunately, there's no gas discount here in California for that.
We're working on it. You can't make miracles happen,
Cut a deal with Chevron and maybe something will happen at some point.
Baby steps.
So, Anthony, where do we begin following MMC and the 90s crew and yourself and everything that goes along with it? Plus, this is one other thing, since it is a deep cut and you do have a food blog and podcast about San Diego, I'm only an hour and a half away. If I am in San Diego for 4 hours, like I got a 4-hour layover at the airport, I could actually leave, go grab something for lunch and head back to the airport. Where's the one restaurant I need to go to?
Man, that's a tall order. Depends what kind of food you like. I always say if you're going to come to San Diego, you want to get Mexican food, because we have the short of Mexico itself, we have a great burrito. So any corner shop is good. Man, there's so many. Like City Tacos is a great one. We have just incredible burgers at the Friendly. There's so much. There's so much. I live in a food mecca, which was a big reason I started doing that. And burrito. Get a burrito.
By the way, when did Petco Park become such a great place to eat?
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm not a huge baseball fan, but I'm from New England, so I grew up going to Fenway Park. And when I was a kid, I used to get like a hot dog and some nachos and stuff like that. And just a few years ago, one of my best friends was having his birthday, and we were gonna go see a Padres game. And I hadn't been to a ballpark in 25 years. I couldn't believe it. There were like upscale restaurants there that have the Crack Shack and like Hodad's for burgers and all these other places. And my decision fatigue was just raked over the coals that day. I couldn't believe it, but like the food is it's like gourmet food now.
Anthony spent $250 on food as he ate every half inning.
I just pretended I was at Disneyland.
There you go. Next time you're up this way, we got to go to the park. We'll hang out over there. But remind us of the socials that we need to follow in regards to the MMC themselves.
Absolutely.
And how we can be involved in the charity if we so decide to donate and participate.
First things first, if you are down with the throwbacks and seeing that where we've been and where it all started on Instagram, you need to follow 90s Mickey Mouse Club. You also on Facebook can follow MMC89 because I post to both and I do exclusive content to both. Videos, pictures, throwbacks. You will unlock so many core memories. Once a week, I do an intro to a video where I try to give you some behind the scenes scoop and other things like that. It's a great place to engage with other fans and walk down memory lane. If you want to know more about what the Mouseketeers are up to now, you want to follow Always in the Club. And it's like that across every platform on Instagram and on Facebook. You can find out when the events are coming, what we're going to be doing, who we're partnering with. And for the charitable portion of it, you want to follow Always in the Club Foundation, which is AITC Foundation on Instagram and Always in the Club Foundation on Facebook. Those are probably the two biggest platforms where you can find out how we're kind of continuing the legacy of what the show started as adults, using the power and influence and the pull that they have now to reach out and give back. And that was something that just happened this past weekend. Dee Dee and Jennifer were both down at Walt Disney World participating in Imagination Campus, which is something Disney does to kind of give kids a weekend experience of what it's like to learn about leadership, performance. They were there for the performance camp. They did a number from Frozen the Musical. There was a Q&A, and I spoke to some of the parents and they were so happy and the kids absolutely loved it. And it's just another way of giving back in so many different ways. And so, yeah, that's how you can find out more and visit MickeyMouseClubReunion.com.
And for people that are always as hungry as I am, what's your food blog so we can check that out and the podcast that you run?
It is called The Boy Who Ate San Diego. And you can see it on YouTube under The Boy Who Ate San Diego and also on Spotify. There's not going to be some new episodes for a little while because I had an unexpected TikTok blow up with my day job. So that has kind of become my third job. my day job is I create signage and draw illustrations. And a young person I work with was like, you should put that on TikTok. I'm like, nobody's going to watch this. Nobody's going to care. And then 12 million views later, here we are. So that's Anthony Donovan Official, which I named as a joke because I'm not famous on TikTok.
Anthony Donovan Official, unofficially famous is right. Where we're going with this.
Yeah, legend in my own mind.
My man, it's been a great pleasure chatting with you. Next time I see you, I'll give you a hug instead of look so confrontational.
Just don't sneak up on me.
No. Look at me. Can I really sneak up on anybody?
Point taken. Point taken. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it.